Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Crypto Analyst channel. My name is Brendan, and I hope all of you guys are having a great day no matter where you are from. And today we have an action-packed episode of crypto news and technical analysis because we just saw a $100 million cryptocurrency hack happen really just a couple of hours ago. Now, this is another one of the cross-chain bridges, just like Ronin and just like the wormhole hack. We're going to be breaking this one down and talk about exactly what was stolen and how it happened, as well as all this other great crypto news that is happening. As you can see from all of these different tabs, there's a lot of different kinds of news happening, both good and bad inside of the crypto community right now. But another one of the biggest ones was Solana's plans to launch a smartphone. Now, there is a little bit of an argument right now as to whether they can produce the first decentralized or Web3 or blockchain-based smartphone. And this is a pretty intriguing article and definitely something that is bullish on Solana, despite them having a pretty rough start to the year, or at least for the past 6 months or so. But we'll break that down in just a second. And of course, we need to understand what's happening on the macros of Bitcoin and its major correlation to NASDAQ as well. So if any of that does sound interesting, make sure you stick around for the entire length of this video, as there will be important information discussed the entire way through. But first things first, this $100 million crypto hack comes from a community called Horizon. Now, Horizon was developed by the crypto startup Harmony, and this comes just after we saw a $600 million Ronin hack, and in addition to that, a $320 million wormhole hack. Now, both of these were very similar to what happened over here with Harmony, or Horizon rather, because this is another bridge. Now, if you don't know what a bridge is, you can bridge different blockchains, but it does leave vulnerabilities out there. And so usually, as much testing as these companies and these producers do, they don't always know exactly what the vulnerability can be until something like this happens. And then that leaves them kind of like a deer in headlights as to, oh, okay, so that's what it is. Now we can get it fixed. But that's not to say that there can't be another vulnerability out there down the line. Now, it's not to say that they don't do extensive amounts of testing to make sure that this doesn't happen. Again, this is like a Six Sigma thing where for every million forms of vulnerabilities that they make sure don't go through, if there is just that one that someone who really understands the code and the information behind the scenes, if they find that vulnerability, they're going to be able to exploit it for a lot of money. And unfortunately, that was exactly the case with Harmony over here and through Horizon. So what ended up happening is this thief was able to manipulate the system and take about $100 million worth of cryptocurrency. And this is detrimental because it obviously hurts a lot of just everyday people, but it also hurts another one of these bridges that we have. I think this needs to be a little bit of a wake-up call for these bridges. This is starting to become a little bit too frequent, and I think that what really needs to be seen here is that there needs to be more validators, and there needs to be a little bit more work put into safety of what's happening behind the scenes. I think during the bull market, people got very, very comfortable and complacent with the amount of profits and money that was coming into crypto. And this is a sign that with the growth in the industry as a whole, we need to see a growth in the safety of the industry as well. So hopefully these different kinds of bridges and exchanges can pick up on that. But in addition to all of this, the crypto exchange FTX is now talking about acquiring a stake in BlockFi. Now, BlockFi is one of the largest DeFi platforms or communities, whatever you want to call them, in the cryptocurrency industry right now. They're right up there with Nexo, and of course, previously up there with Celsius, who is now below them because of that whole fiasco. But even BlockFi came under fire just a little bit earlier this year for not completely meeting US regulation standards, at least not to the extent of how they were earning people dividends on their cryptocurrency or staking. In addition to this, Coinbase is planning on launching a crypto's derivative exchange, and Solana is also at the forefront of the news once again, but this time for something very bullish, because Solana is planning on launching a smartphone. Now, if you haven't heard this news, there has been a massive push for Web3. And what Solana wants to do with this Solana smartphone is put people at the forefront of Web3, give everyone access to Web3 through this smartphone. So this would be a Web3 centered smartphone, very similar to how the iPhone works. Or when the iPhone came out, it was a revolutionary piece of technology that changed the way that we interacted on a day-to-day life. And so hopefully their goals here are really to kind of have that same revolutionary idea, but transitioning people away from Web 2.0 and to more of a Web 3.0 with how they conduct their everyday mobile life. So is the idea good? I think it absolutely is. And this is the kind of news that Solana really needed. They saw a couple outages this year and a couple of other bad news, but this is the kind of thing where if this goes right, if they do this correctly, this can be a recovery and a turning point for Solana to really put them back at the front and the forefront of the argument that they could be a competing layer 1 blockchain. Now, to continue this conversation, Voyager has lost about 60% of its share price. And the main reason for this being is that they announced that Three Arrows Capital, another one of these capital funds to really get hit by the crypto market, owes them quite a bit of money, about $660 million in total. Now, this comes from around over 15,000 Bitcoin and around 350 million USDC, which is a stable coin from the Coinbase exchange. So it's a mixture of about half in Bitcoin and about half in USDC, the stable coin, summing up to a grand total of around $660 million, which is certainly a lot of money. People don't like to hear that this fund that owes them a lot of money isn't doing so well, because what it looks like is they might not actually get all this money back. And so that's what the fear is behind Voyager. So with Voyager being down over 60%, there's still blood in the waters of the crypto markets. There's a lot of people freaking out, and there's a lot of people feeding into all the FUD that is happening. Now, granted, some of this FUD is very well placed, right? Because real things are happening to some of these crypto exchanges. So a lot of these projects that claim that they were fully decentralized, the light's starting to shine on them, and people are realizing that they're not all as decentralized as they claim to be, because all of a sudden they are halting people's withdrawals and halting deposits and halting what people are able to do. And if something's fully decentralized, you're not going to be able to do that from a singular entity. And so there is a lot of fear out there, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I think everybody should recognize that, or at least look at the history of cryptocurrency and understand that not every project is going to make it out, but the industry as a whole will move on. Even in recessions, not all of the stocks make it through, but the market as a whole always makes it out of a recession, right? So let's take a look over here at what's happening on the Bitcoin chart, and then we can understand what's happening on NASDAQ as well. So Bitcoin has been on a pretty nice uptrend. We saw our first green candle, and it was a pretty sizable one since we bottomed around 17K, around 17.6K. And since then, we saw our first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and now we are on our sixth candle. Now, granted, not all of these were green candles, but this is the sixth day, almost a week out from when we hit this multi-year low going back to 2020. So let's look at NASDAQ actually. Before, I was going to get us into some of our different kinds of indicators and oscillators, but let's look at NASDAQ before we do any of that, right? Because we talked about NASDAQ on the weekly time scale desperately needing to hold above the 200-day moving average, or in this case, the 200 weekly moving average. Because as we have looked at previously, this has been a pivotal point that ever since 2008 happened, we have stayed above this yellow line, which is the 200 weekly moving average. Now, if you zoom into where we're at today, we have just came right down to this area once again. And again, the last time that we touched these areas, we saw big bounces in NASDAQ. This time it was a 36 bounce. The next time that we came and touched this during the COVID crash, we immediately saw a 40% recovery. The times before this, it's self-explanatory. But we are now at quite the significant dip. And if NASDAQ's going to go back to all-time highs from where it's currently at, that could easily be another 30 to 40% to the upside. And you have to ask yourself, if Bitcoin is correlated to NASDAQ and NASDAQ is bouncing, what could 30 to 40% on NASDAQ do to Bitcoin? And I think that could easily be 100% on NASDAQ, on Bitcoin. Because if NASDAQ moves 40%, I think it's very possible for Bitcoin to move 80 to 100%. It's just how the asset works. It's about 2 to 2.5 times more volatile than NASDAQ. And if we saw this could see Bitcoin breaching back up towards $40,000 to $50,000. Now, do I think the bear market is over? I don't think we have enough evidence to support this yet. Again, we are about a week in to just hitting a multi-year low. A week will not give us enough information to say whether or not a recession or a bear market cycle is completely over with, right? But what I will say is that a bear market doesn't have to end when the bottom happens. We can still see plenty of consolidation. We can see a lot of chopping here. And what we could even see is a rise up to form some sort of bull trap where people get very comfortable longing again, only to get rejected from a previous area of support and bring price back down to where they didn't think it could go again. So keep your eye out on this area. We are certainly at a very interesting level, because if we look at Bitcoin on the monthly time scale, we can see, and I want to move this over to Bitstamp, we can see that we're at the exact same level that we bottomed at in 2014, and we're at the exact same level, or really just below these levels that we bottomed in 2014 and 2018. So keep your eye out. There's a cycle here and it's happening. Guess what? We bottomed in 2014. 4 years later, we bottomed in 2018. 4 years later, we're now again at a multi-year bottom in 2020, and we're at this exact same level. So I want to focus and break this down on next week's video, so we'll talk about it a little bit more then on Wednesday, but I want to leave this in the back of your head and just make sure everyone has their alert signals on. So keep an eye on what's happening in the crypto industry. The traditionals are going to be closed over the weekend, so there's no need to stress about that. But crypto has been pulling back about, I feel like, every Saturday for the past couple of weeks. So hopefully we can see a little bit of a pullback. I don't want to be a bear, but the better entries I can get here, the better. So hopefully you all did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And of course, if you're not a part of Crypt Nation, I give almost all of the info that we talk about on here goes early on Crypt Nation. So if you're a member over there, you get early access to my full technical analysis, and also the opportunity to ask me any kind of questions that you do have as well. So once again, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.